we've got a global view of what's happening in education. So we can take that information to develop this platform and then share it beyond the Jewish market.
Chana Kanzen, thank you so much for joining me. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
I know you're extremely, extremely busy, so thank you for taking the time to do this. You're the CEO of Jewish Interactive, a nonprofit organization, very successful nonprofit organization, but you're an educator at heart, a teacher by profession, and you have very, you have very, you know, your own views on education and what needs to happen in order to improve education and spread messages to children around the world. Right now, you're focusing on Jewish education, but you're passionate about the broader sense of education and how to do that more effectively. So I'd love to hear a little bit about your journey. We'll start from there, and we'll talk also obviously about Jewish Interactive and what you're doing over there.
Sure. So I've been a teacher for about 20 years, starting teaching every age group from little ones right through to high school. And I've always been really passionate about good education and getting the kids excited, and I feel it's a really important role. And about 10 years ago, I was actually leading a school. I was approached by the current chief rabbi actually in the UK to open up a school. So I like challenges, and I decided, okay, I'll open up a school. But I wanted it to be a beacon school. I wanted it to be a school that would be a model for other,
Right.
especially Jewish schools, to look at. And we
By
worked
the way,
really
just for
hard.
context, the when you're saying you were a teacher for 20 years, is this specifically Jewish education, or what sort of teaching did you
No,
do?
I was a qualified teacher. I taught general studies. And about halfway through my career, I actually started to work in Jewish schools
Mhm.
and realized that actually anywhere up to 50% of the day in a Jewish school is devoted to Jewish education. But what I found fascinating was the delivery and actual relevancy of the education for that 50% or 20% or 10% was just not very good. The teachers weren't always qualified, or they didn't have good resources. And I found that quite disturbing, actually, that parents are choosing to send their kids to a school for that reason, and yet the
Right.
education that was being delivered was not on the same standard. So I decided to move being a qualified teacher into the Jewish sphere to try and up the game. And so we opened up this Jewish school as a beacon school, and it was very exciting. And this was 10 years ago, more actually, about 13 years ago. We started opening a school, and smart boards were just coming in.
Yeah.
It's amazing how much things have moved in the past sort of 13 years. But if you think back, we didn't even have iPhones then. Like, it was like really, computers were just coming into school, and it was just at the beginning of the technology boom. It was
Yeah.
the Facebook. And
I remember those smart
so,
boards. I remember them coming in and
right,
slowly being placed in the classrooms. Right.
right. So because we were in a new school, we had smart boards in every classroom. It was really cool. And I had great stuff to put on it for math and English, and it came to Jewish studies, and there just really wasn't anything except for some Chabad videos. And I was just thinking, this is crazy. Like, there's just no good content for religious education. And in parallel, what's going on is that you've got the world is just going crazy, and religious education is really about mainly morals and inclusivity and living good lives as
Right.
as, as good people. Most general religions like that, and yet the way it was being delivered, it was in very old-fashioned sort of paper-based worksheets, which so these kids were experiencing English and maths in this really virtual, exciting way, and then the religious education was very 2D, and that for me was a really big problem. And I met this girl who came from South Africa. Her name was Nikki Newfield. And she had this CD that she had made about Shabbat. And she put it in my computer, and it was like Disney animation, blew my mind. I hadn't seen anything like this before. And I was just like, where have you been all my life? This is exactly what I need.
I can't even imagine.
And
Disney animation is about Shabbat.
yeah, it was like this whole animated Disney style amazing CD. And the amazing story was that she had created this. She wasn't an educator, but she had created this CD on bed rest throughout her pregnancy. She couldn't get up, and she had this idea to create digital
Wow.
content, and she made this CD. So she came and I didn't even watch it. Like she put it in my computer within 30 seconds. I was like, I love it. And she's like, but wait, see the rest of it. I don't need to see anymore. I want my school to use this. This is what we need. But why isn't it online? And where's your educational guide? And where's your lesson plans? And I was just grilling her. And she was like,
Wow.
okay, okay, I need you to come and work with me. And at that point, I had been in education, formal education, all my life, salary jobs. You know, I was training and lecturing and doing all sorts of things, but I'd never thought about leaving the security of a salary and
Right.
starting something, especially a nonprofit. I had no nonprofit background at all. I didn't. There's a funny story actually. I remember I went to see a funder to potentially get office space for Jewish Interactive. And she said to me, so have you got a board? And I said to her, what's a board? That's how green I was. Like, I literally did not know a thing about what I was doing. I just knew I had this vision. I knew that it's something that needs to be done.
So
And
I have to
so,
say already, Hannah, that a lot of the people that are coming on this in this series are they're the entrepreneurs, investors. A lot of them coming from the tech scene, and over there, going to the tech scene, the route is pretty known that you find a pain point, you raise money, you go build a startup. Now you're coming in, which I think is fascinating, as 20 years into education, and you're saying that, okay, while I'm teaching general studies, I'm seeing that there's this gap in the way that Jewish education, it doesn't necessarily have to be Jewish, but in general there is a gap that a certain segment of education is not receiving, is not getting the quality education that it needs. There's this gap. I'm going to create a school that is going to do this better. And then you find somebody who's actually leveraging technology to actually get this, to make this much more interactive. I just think that it's fascinating to draw the parallel, because this is pure entrepreneurship right here.
it really was. I mean, she basically was almost like an investor. So she had this trust fund set up that she wanted to devote to developing this, but she didn't have the mechanism. She wanted to pilot it in England because it was a small community, and I happened to be quite a good networker, and I was networked with all the schools. So we
Yeah.
just I got in contact with all the principals, and we did this release, and we just released the product without even having a company. So we basically, what we did was we had this whole day and 70 teachers turned up. It was unheard of. Like 70
Wow.
schools like appeared, and by the end of the day, they were signing checks to Jewish Interactive, which didn't exist. So I walked away with like $6,000 in checks and no company, like it didn't
Wait, so
exist. And I
was that, were they trying to purchase the product, or
yeah, so we were
donations?
so we are almost like a social enterprise. So what we do is we believe in charging for some of our products because we want to bring in revenue, sustainable revenue, but not to make a profit. Any revenue that we
Right.
bring in goes to the nonprofit. And also, because the Jewish market is quite small, it's not sustainable. So most technology, the way that they work is scalability and mass consumption.
Right.
But even if we reached every single Jewish child in the world, it wouldn't really be profitable. So we needed to have that nonprofit element into it. But at the same time, this was at the beginning of the technology boom, which was having an impact on education.
Right.
So I left my job and I started Jewish Interactive, but at the same time was I was advocating for different approaches in education because what I could see is I saw something remarkable happen. I walked into my classroom of 30 kids with an iPad and it wasn't even open. And it was like bees to honey. Like all of a sudden, I had 30 kids around this iPad with this engagement that I had never seen before with anything else that I did. And if you are a passionate teacher and you want to get something across, then you're going to use the most effective way of doing that. And for me, I
Right.
could see that the levels of concentration and engagement on these devices was just unprecedented. I hadn't seen that before. And I thought, whatever happens, I have to get my head around this if I want to get to these kids because this is
Wow.
where they're at. And the issue that I then had was years of trying to convince head teachers and teachers that we've got to move this. It's not even debatable. It's not a luxury. So they perceived technology as this luxury, and even today, you'll go into classrooms, and many classrooms are still paper based. The
Right.
kids are writing, handing
Sure.
in their results. They don't get their results to 2 weeks later.
Sure.
And how does that correlate with these kids' day to day experience of instant gratification? They're on multiple
Right.
platforms, they're accessing huge levels of information. And yet, the education methods have not moved on. So, what's happening are, a lot of teachers who haven't moved on are still focused on delivering content and information, which is just
Right.
not where the kids don't need to know and be delivered huge amounts of information anymore on rote learning. What they need to do is learn how to access the right information.
Right.
They need to learn how to collaborate, how to access and build relationships, emotional intelligence, all of these other skills that are so vital for jobs
Sure.
today are not being taught. So what I did was I actually made some connections with Google and Apple, and we started to train. We actually had a couple of trainings in Apple headquarters in London for all the Jewish teachers in the
Wow.
UK, and Google helped as well to try and train these teachers in embedding technology into their classroom. And it's not just about having a computer. We can see that now with COVID really quickly. Really, it's been actually fascinating for me to watch over the past 6 months what's happened,
Yeah.
because what's happened in the past 6 months, I've been advocating for years. And all of a sudden, education has moved, I would say, more in the past 6 months than it has in the past 20 years. It's
Wow.
unbelievable how now every single teacher has had experience with online education, whether they like it or not.
Sure.
Some have been really successful and some have been really frustrated, and some children have been really successful and some children have been really frustrated. And I think that it's not about it's not the technology that's the problem. It's you cannot teach online in the same way that you've been teaching offline. You have to
Sure.
change the pedagogy. And so that's what I've been trying to do, is to change people's approach to education, and instead of just delivering information, changing that whole emphasis onto allowing children to access knowledge and learn and be self-directed and creative, which, and I suppose most people watching here who are entrepreneurs know that these are essential skills for entrepreneurship,
Sure.
which we
Or
know.
any learner in the 21st century, really.
Yeah, and quite frankly, with this new generation that's coming up, like these kids, they're going to be graduating in what, 2025, 2030, right?
Right.
Where is the world going to be there? How many jobs are going to be available if these kids don't have the skills to be creative and to work in a global way and collaborate? They're not going to be employable,
Right.
because all the other jobs aren't going to exist, right?
Sure.
The jobs that the teachers are currently teaching for will not be there. So unless they have experience in these skills, they're just not going to be able to survive in the world. And school is meant to be priming your children for survival in the world, and it's not been doing that up till now. I think what's happened with COVID is that the world is sort of, especially the world of education, is having to rethink. It's being
Sure.
forced to rethink, and it's difficult and it's challenging, and not everyone's getting it right, but it's necessary. And it's been a really interesting few months to observe this going on in the world and seeing what's working, what isn't. And I think we've definitely hit a turning point. I don't think there's any going back. I think that technology and education is here to stay, and we've just got to get our heads around it and make it work. And what's been great for me is that I've been privileged to be in a position for the past sort of 10 years where I've been gradually working with a bigger and bigger market. I now work with a global market with schools all around the world. And so I'm able to see what works and what doesn't, and how they're using platforms. And we're now actually building a new platform, not just for the Jewish world, for everybody. We're building an open source platform so anybody can use it. And the idea of this platform is for teachers to create content, and children to learn asynchronously using this content and build sort of like this sharing community. And so we're developing this now. It's really exciting, and it's really a gift to be able to develop this platform during the time of COVID, when we've got so many teachers who are experiencing
Right.
challenges and blockages, and we're trying to get that information and then build that into what we're creating. So it's a very exciting time for us
Of
at the
course,
moment.
but Hamad, then I have to ask. So everything that we've talked about until now, it sounds like it's relevant for all subjects in education and for all teachers and for all students. Why is it Jewish Interactive? Because it sounds like even that experience of having that person come in with a CD and sharing those lessons about Shabbat in an interactive way, it sounds like that there is a that the pain point and the solution she uncovered is something that's relevant for many other fields, right? So why specifically in that market? Because you're starting off by also saying that inherently the Jewish education market is so small that you had to position this as an NGO. Why not take this to a profitable to a for-profit company that is trying to help all education all around?
It's a really good question. There's a few reasons for that. First of all, the Jewish market needs specific content. And what's very difficult about the Jewish market is there's a saying that if you have two Jews, you have three opinions, right?
Yeah.
So the same with all the schools. Every school is unique. So everyone says, well, why don't you just do like one curriculum on Judaism? And then you've got
Hmm.
it.
Right.
And there's been many people that have made online curriculums about Judaism. So why do we need to do it? And the answer is that every school has their USP, so to speak, and every school has their own way of delivering that form of the education, and that's what makes the school unique, and that's why people are sending their kids to that school. So what we did was we developed a platform that allows people to create their own content that's personalized to them. Now that is relevant to everybody. You're right. But someone needed to do it for the Jewish market. And because it wasn't profitable, who's going to do that? If you want to start a business and make it profitable, you're not going to do something for the Jewish market.
Right.
But unless we actually consciously did it, there wouldn't be anyone doing that. So I had a decision to make. I could either build a profitable business. If I wanted to build a profitable business, I would have to not focus on the Jewish content to make it profitable. And I just decided that I didn't want to do that. I wanted to give to the Jewish world consciously. And in order to do that, I had to make it a non-profit, and I wasn't going to make profit. And what's actually amazing about this organization is we have the most phenomenally talented people that I've cultivated and brought together. Amazing team members, and they all feel the same way. They're all doing this out of a social conscious need for the Jewish world. And they're very talented. All of them could work in like Google or Facebook, but they're doing it because they feel there is a
Wow.
need for the Jewish world. So if you look at other markets like the Islamic market and the Christian market, there are phenomenal products. They have much bigger budgets. They have much more people for a start, and they have phenomenal content. And the
Right.
Jewish world just doesn't. So, I mean, there are other organizations that are doing great jobs for high school and beyond, but there wasn't really anyone doing something for the elementary and middle school, and we felt that that was needed. So, it was a conscious decision to actually be a nonprofit to fill a need in the Jewish
Sure.
market. However, you're right. What we are building now, the place that we've got to now, where we're actually building our own platform, is consciously being built for other markets, not just the Jewish market. We've taken our learning, because we're quite a small community. There's only 5,000 Jewish schools in the world, and we're working with about 1,000 of them already.
Really?
So
Wow. You have
yeah,
20% of the market you're going after.
we do, and because we're in over 100 countries, so we can really see the cultural
Wow.
differences and what's happening. We've got a global view of what's happening in education, so we can take that information to develop this platform and then share it beyond the Jewish market. And at that point, it is possible that we could diversify and form a for-profit that will help the non-profit market. But if we wouldn't have focused on the Jewish market, then there would still be this vacuum because it isn't profitable. So it's kind of like a labor of love at the moment. It's something
Wow.
that I wanted to give to the Jewish world, and it's not just me. I wouldn't be where I am today without a phenomenal team, phenomenally talented team who are based in 4 countries, and an amazing board and phenomenal funders and
Wow.
visionaries who have all come together to do this thing. So it's very exciting.
That's
Yeah.
just unbelievable. Hannah, 20 minutes go by way too fast, but this is inspiring. I can't believe you're in 100 countries, you're in 1,000 schools, you're in 20% of the Jewish schools. I mean, that's it. And the whole story is just so entrepreneurial. It's like raw entrepreneurship. It's just, it's very, very inspiring. And I wish you best of luck. Thank you for being so generous with your time. Before we finish, I have to ask you the most important question, which is 3 words that you would use to describe yourself.
Three words I would use to describe myself. So I think I have to say an educator because I'm passionate about education. Um, I'll use 3 words in one word, like pushing the boundaries. I
Yeah.
like to push, and resilient. I'm very resilient, which you have to be running a non-profit, especially in the Jewish world.
I think to
So
be a teacher, you have to be resilient. To to open a school, you have to be resilient, and to run a nonprofit, let alone company, you have to be resilient. Hannah, thank you very, very much. Continue doing good for the world, and stay safe and stay healthy.
my pleasure.
Take care.